Hello, 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 beautiful people, and welcome back to another episode of the USL show, not the Miami FC, where they have some news that came out today. Please don't sue us over a trademark, Miami. Yeah, your owner has more money than I do. We have a champion of champions of the champion, whatever. Promotion, that's only League One. Doesn't matter. Phoenix Rising, the Cardiac Kids once again do it, and they prove everyone wrong on this panel except for me. And with all that, listen, it was a hot day on the internet. We got a whole bunch of people in the USL show mentions, which was also me, which I was going to say something like whoa, don't come at me, but I was also like, wait, I am the admin, whatever. Exciting day, fun match, incredible match. And unfortunately or fortunately, we're all going to relive the penalties again together, and whatever that may be. Phil has had a visceral reaction to that, so let's just jump to you first. Phil, man, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's funny that Ryan's wearing the Miami FC kit because me and my wife just took a little trip down to Miami, a nice little long weekend. So yeah, getting back in the swing of things. That's where I watched this lovely final. And for those who have followed me on the internet for longer than like a couple of years, they'll know that failed Panenkas was something that I drew attention to back in the day. So yeah, wild that we saw horribly failed Panenka in this shootout from the winning team. But I'm sure we'll talk about all of that.
Oh man. And Ryan, speaking of the inner Miami FC, whatever. The Miami FC. I'm about to get really about to get copyright struck today. The Miami FC. We have some news from them. Which we got a fab bomb, which was kind of wild just to randomly get. But Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing well. That was a pretty exciting final. As everyone in the mentions will always say, that everyone except Kaylor got that one incorrect, and we had bet against Phoenix for a large portion of the playoffs, but they gave us a pretty good, memorable final, and probably the best one since 2015 Rochester over at Los Dos.
Yeah. I mean, that was a fun one done by Pony of his top 5 playoff games since the new era. And that was a fun one. Maybe we get into a little bit of that, but maybe not. I don't know. John, how are you doing wearing the Phoenix Rising shirt? John, you alive?
Yeah, a little bit of internet trouble on my end, so
Ah,
that might be. Yeah, I know.
yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit in and out. Hopefully, get that sorted. But excited to be here. Excited that we got a really thrilling championship game. Not excited to relive those penalties.
Well, look, let's just go ahead and get in and relive something that you filmed like 48 hours ago, which is the last USL Tactics show, or at least of the 2023 season, because we're bound to get more videos on people signing. But for the 2023 season, this is the final USL Tactics show. And let's go ahead and get in.
Phoenix Rising are your USL champs for 2023, and they got there because of the offense-first changes Juan Guerra made in the second half to lead a recovery. Early on, you really saw Charleston try to push up in the press by allowing one of their central midfielders in the 4-2-3-1 to close down hard against Rising and build. But the way that Guerra reacted in that second period forced Charleston to sit back and change the momentum of the game. Phoenix possessed all night, but they looked sharper when they were given more time to operate, and that comes due to the fact that they changed up their style. Here you see Panos Amanakas, the right winger, cut inside into the channel and open up an overlap from Darnell King at the wingback spot. But they're only able to play that switch into King in the first place because of the space afforded by Charleston. Now, Guerra really ratcheted things up by bringing on Erickson Gallardo on the left, and then pairing Carlos Harvey and Renzo Zambrano as a central midfield pair as well. Zambrano is a little bit more of a defensive player than what Phoenix had initially, and he liberated Carlos Harvey, a very talented box-to-box sort, to get end-to-end and push up the midfield, roam all over the place, and challenge what the battery had in terms of their structure. Here you see Harvey charging in and earning a penalty kick that was ultimately reversed, but still illustrates what he provides as that sort of central creator. Here you're going to see how Gallardo really affected the game on the left wing. Phoenix wasn't getting a whole lot of offense out of that side early, but Gallardo, more of a natural winger or even a forward in other stops, really did well as that wing back who could push up, pair with Danny Trejo, and force Charleston to pay in their half of the pitch. In that first example, you see how Charleston could counter beyond Gallardo, so there really was a risk-taking aspect, but more often than not, his combination play with Trejo was enough to get Phoenix into attacking positions, and he was ultimately crucial in the tying set piece as well. This was just a great performance from Guerra, a great performance from Phoenix, and it goes to show that the magic that they captured throughout their playoff run was something that's sustainable going forward.
And if people are wondering, Ryan has exited out the stage because apparently his nose is bleeding, ? We don't know. Look, it was a fun one. It was a really fun one to relive kind of again. And hey, I understand that we're going to CBS/ESPN/whatever else is going on. But seeing stuff just like we did with League One, seeing ESPN2 and not just ESPN with the gold plus beside it is pretty neat. Kind of cool to see. Super fun. And it was a really fun finals. And like you talked about, second half adjustments was what it took. And how much of that is just the story of Phoenix in this playoffs? I mean, that's just so much fun. I mean, obviously, Charleston fans, I mean, Nicholas Murray says it was brilliant to be there for. Charleston fans are probably going to say that sucked. I never want to do that again. But also, you just witnessed one of the most fun playoff games I've ever had the, pleasure of watching, with controversy, which we'll get into. But there's so much there.
Can we I guess, well, just like talking about the game itself, it was crazy and wild action, I guess, in both halves. But the journey, just in the tactics show, the journey that Carlos Harvey has been on in this playoffs is wild. And I can say, I think confidently, by a distance, like the luckiest player in these playoffs, in that you could make many arguments for this man being sent off in each of the games that he played in. And yet, like, just watching him scream at the player who fouled him, like on the penalty that then was rescinded. Like, there's so much going on. What a journey he went on. But for Phoenix, I think, like, John obviously hit the nail on the head in terms of the tactics and the fact that Garrett, I think, gets his adjustments exactly right. And there's something about this Phoenix side that there's this moment of like inevitability where the switch just sort of flips. At no point during the first like 75 minutes was anyone thinking that this is going anywhere but a Charleston win. Like, it just wasn't going that way. And then those changes get made, some of the tactical adjustments get made, and all of a sudden, like, it just starts to feel like, especially after the equalizer, you're thinking like, oh my God, like it's happening again. And Phoenix just really have this like air of inevitability. And despite the challenges that they then face in the penalty shootout, like, they claw their way back from this like almost impossible position. So despite the fact that I personally, as a fan of another Western Conference team, who was definitely bitter as things were playing out about the fact that I'm watching another Western Conference rival get crowned as champions. The reality is that, like, they clawed themselves back from so many of those positions that you literally can't hold it against them that they pulled it out again. Phoenix just had that X factor in these playoffs, and the fact that they went on the road and did this time after time after time just reinforces that, never underestimate Phoenix being the villain. And they, this playoffs, it was Game of Thrones. Like, the villains won.
Yeah, and on the Harvey point real quick, I think it says a lot about what Juan Guerra does as a man manager. The fact that despite the fact that you still get all of the passion and the fire from Carlos Harvey, he's not the dude who's going out and violently stamping like he was with LA Galaxy. He's not the player who is a red card threat every single minute he's on the pitch like he was with LA. Like, there's still the heat to his game, but it seems like Guerra has figured out how to put him in positions to fix his mentality and really weaponize him as a player that can make a difference with the acceptable risk, sure, but a little bit more focused. And I think that's what made this Rising team so special, was that they weren't a perfectly constructed roster. This team had flaws, and Guerra consistently, and especially down the stretch when this team jumped into the postseason and made this run, consistently made the right changes just to put his players in the positions they needed to be in to get the job done. Whether that was the shootout with San Diego to kick off the playoffs, a more defensive kind of comeback game like this one. I was really just impressed with the way that Rising always had an answer no matter the situation, and the credit has to go to Guerra for a lot of that.
I do, before we go to the penalties and stuff, though, I do want to give credit to Charleston and the game that they played, because for large parts of this game, I was thinking that there was only one way it was going to go. They create about 2 XG against a Phoenix team that allowed only 0.6 XG to Sacramento Republic. So they did a really good job of putting this Phoenix team a little bit out of position, giving themselves a good chance of winning this final. And special mention for Nick Markanek, who scored Charleston's lone goal. During the regulation period. I think not, and this is not shade on the broadcast in any sort of way, but there was understandably some attention being brought to the absence of Fidel Barajas, who's on U17 World Cup duty with Mexico. And I just want to say that Nick Markanek was by no means like making up the numbers, right? Like, he is a fixture in this Battery side. He is a player that like Pierman has often looked to be a spark, and was again tonight. That instinctive finish, like with the left foot, just such a beautiful strike, and a player who I think is maybe flies a little bit under the radar for a guy who had 11 regular season goal involvements for this Battery side. So anyways, just wanted to call attention there, and Battery in the end unlucky in many ways, but still put on quite the show in front of their home crowd, and gave us the final that we eventually ended up with.
Some with Markant, you mentioned it in our private chat about, hey, can we please stop talking about Markanek like he is just some bum that was just rotting the bench all game? I love Devin and I love Mike. They have been nothing but amazing to us, and I want to throw this out there just ahead of time. If anybody was making quote unquote making up the numbers, it would have been Tristan Traeger, right? Like, Traeger was the one that kind of filled in the Barajas. I don't want to say do your notes, Mike and Devin, because that's not fair either, right? Because like they do a lot of work to be prepared with that. But to kind of treat, after I think would have been the Birmingham game, the last game of the regular season, Markanek was kind of undroppable to me anyway. It wasn't like he was just an extra player. If anybody was the quote unquote extra super sub player, that would have been Traeger in my mind anyway.
Yeah, and just I think 2 things here, dead on about Markanek. I do want to say, like, love the broadcast from Devin and Mike.
Yeah.
So I was talking to my mom, who lives in Phoenix, has not watched a USL game in probably years, since I was home watching Indy 11. But she checked out the broadcast and was like specifically asking me, like, so what's the deal with those two? Like, they did a great job, which I just thought was hilarious. But in terms of the Battery with this one, I think Pierman may have gone a bit conservative, and understandably so, in the second half. And I think when that game went into added time, it really didn't do well for them. Like, early on in that game, the way that Ikaza and Allen took turns doing the usual thing, pushing up in the press. And more often than not, Allen was the guy making those runs forward, which then let Ikaza get tons of space on the ball in deeper positions, which was, I thought, a really effective change. But then, and this goes to Barajas being gone, you got to bring Beto Avila onto the wing, Robbie Crawford onto the wing. two guys who are a little bit more physical, give you a little bit less spark offensively, it left the Battery in a position where they were defending, and not able to get out of their defensive zone in that second half. I think it's an unfortunate knock-on effect, but I mean, take nothing away from the fact that like Pierman still did what he had to have done with the hand he was dealt, but Phoenix just had the trump card on the bench.
I think on that there are a lot of similar patterns, I think, actually, to the Western Conference Final and this game in terms of Sac Republic's like sort of approach to the second half and Ben Pierman's approach to the second half. And it's one of those things where it's like, know your history or you're doomed to repeat it. And I think unfortunately Ben does get it wrong in that the key thing in that second half was actually a second goal and not stability. Like it was like give up some of the safety in favor of grabbing a second goal, because the last thing you need is Phoenix in striking distance of an equalizer with minutes to play. Like you just can't leave that open for them.
We haven't talked about Stenberg. Dude, flu game. Straight up flu game. Not I got food poisoning, Michael Jordan flu game. Like, this is a legit flu game. Scores the winner. And, okay, I didn't realize that the dude was sick, right? And which explains more why he wasn't absolutely going crazy after he scored the goal. He looked like he wanted to die, which makes a lot more sense now in hindsight, because I was like, this is a really subdued celebration for a guy who just scored an equalizer in the finals in the 90th minute. Like, this is the craziest, like, I'm being cool about this. Now that makes so much more sense. And with that, I mean, he was already having a great game. Personal opinion, I think he would have been up there in the conversation of possibly player of the match before the goal anyway. He was having a really good match. But find out that he was dying. The other day I had a cold, and I took a nap at my desk at work during my lunch break because I thought I was going to kill over, let alone making me run intensely for 2 hours. No shot. And do it at a high level. Crazy what he did.
Yeah. I mean, what more can you say about like the Phoenix side that just it really sums up what they've done this entire playoffs, which is just they absolutely don't know when they're beaten, and they never knew when to quit. And Stenberg, crashing the box like sick as a dog, and heading in the equalizer is, I mean, fairy tale stuff for Phoenix fans, obviously. I'm not sure. I'm not sure Battery fans will see it the same way, and I am thinking back to what some people in the chat were saying about witnessing something fun. It's like the people in the stadium definitely didn't think they were witnessing anything approaching a fun final. Just to be totally clear.
Before we get to the penalty shootout, I want to relive a moment that would have been a lot more controversial if Phoenix did not win in penalties.
But watch the drive. He gets the first touch. Beautiful by Carlos Harvey. It's in front of the player. The argument here, but watch the drive. He gets.
Okay, Kaylor, start off with your take. Are you giving that?
In live time, okay, with the context of that angle and being able to slow it down like it was, no. In live time, I thought it was a pen. In action, when it happened, I thought it was a penalty. And whenever it was overturned, here's the thing. I think the ref going over and saying, hey, what did you see? You did not think it was a penalty was the correct call. I know Phoenix fans were saying he looked at the video board, he saw it, and that's why they reversed it. Do we have any proof of that, or did it just happen to play in the background and they are saying that that's for sure what happened? Because if it did happen, can't have it. But If it didn't, like, that's just a little bit of speculation. I'm just saying, like, center ref did the right thing and going to the AR and saying, was that a penalty? In live time with the angle in real time, I gasped and said, that's a penalty. That was my initial instant gut reaction, which I can see why it was given.
I mean, they got the call right in the end. However, they arrived there, like, the call is correct. And it was funny seeing the amount of takes, like, that is a pen all day, like Stonewall pen. It's like, it's definitely not, but I could see why he gave it initially. And you know, how they arrived at that call, like, maybe up for debate. The bottom line is that they got it right, because he slides through, and the key there is that the defender does not initiate contact, and that is like the key point of this is that the defender slides in and doesn't take any of Harvey, and it's really Harvey, like, continuing the run through after the ball's already been taken by the defender. And so, yeah, for me, not a penalty. The incident I'm more interested in is actually Marcanic being potentially fouled in the box in like the second or third minute of the game. We got no replay of that, and it wasn't turned into like a controversial incident because there was no call, and play continued for a certain amount of time. So I'm just saying that in the balance of things, like, I think they arrived at the right decision. I think there's maybe more of a shout for like what happened in those opening minutes.
I actually think this was like a really well refereed game from start to finish. No complaints on either side on balance. I mean, we saw the clip of the play. That's a very clean tackle from Akaza. It looks a little awkward just because, like, he's in the sliding motion. Harvey's continuing to make the run. Like, there is physicality that ensues, but it's a clean tackle. I was happy to see how the referee kept his head and managed that play. And hey, Phoenix, it didn't matter in the end. Like, they kept their heads. They weren't overly upset about the fact that they thought they had a penalty and then had it reversed, kept on grinding and got the job done. It's kind of what you want to see in a game like this.
I just want to come back to, I guess, just what I said initially. Again, remember, not a ref. That's I'm not a ref. But I did see some people initially that was like, that's never a pin. I don't know how he could ever say it was a pin ever. We saw alternate angles at slow-mo in live time. I have no dog in this fight. I was rooting for no one. I was rooting for the league to put on a good show, and I gasped because I thought it was a penalty. My initial thought was, that's a pin. I totally understand how he got there. Don't get me wrong. If we see that replay later and that penalty is given and Phoenix ends up winning on a 90-minute header as opposed to equalizing, we're having a completely different conversation of, should we have VAR in a final and all that kind of stuff, which, you know, we can talk about that at some other point. But yeah, I don't know how anybody could say is I can't understand how a ref could ever call that a pin, because I definitely thought it was one in first glance. So, let's just, what we're going to do next is we are going to relive the penalties, and I just want, we're going to have the sound off, and so we can talk through this as it's happening. Maybe Vince talk about a little PTSD. I don't know. Because as we so elegantly said on the USL show Twitter, it was the best and worst penalty shootout of all time. Like, it was awful and fantastic all at once. And let's just do it. Let me pull it up real fast. And I'm going to mute it. Bang. Let's just Queso up first. And
Dude, I squealed. I literally yelled out loud, like, just watching this. I could not believe my eyes.
I just want to watch the first one. Just, if anybody, like John said, if anybody knows about just something about hammering a ball,
I'm being dead serious when I say that might be the worst penalty taken in a final of any sort ever. Like, I'm like, and I have nothing, like, I don't have any hate for Cuejo or anything like that, but this is the decision to Panenka on the first penalty is wild, followed by the execution just being just not there. Like, Muse doesn't buy any of what Cuejo is selling here. It's just crazy. Like, I really don't. Please stop replaying it. Like, it's causing me physical pain because it's just, yeah, there's just nothing about it. Like, he doesn't sell it enough. The placement is straight and not high, I don't know. It's crazy. I totally understand. He probably thought he could catch Muse out, and it just, wow, yeah, wild.
My thing is with it was Muse not diving. Again, he probably read that he was going for the Panenka, but also him not diving, absolute gall. Because imagine if he just wallops it into a corner and he's just standing there. Like, that's a little gutsy from Muse too. Again, not professional goalie, but if I just decide to just stand there and it just goes into a corner, I look like an idiot. A little bit of guts there from Muse to stand his ground and read it the whole way. And then let's see, next one.
AJ Patterson, who very cool that he's the guy to be able to
Yeah.
take that first penalty for this team, and Clinical getting into the corner.
These two pens from Charleston, like they're next to, I'm like, it's a wrap, because these are two of the best penalties. Like, just right in the corner, no nonsense. Like, him and Augie just like putting it away. Then
Phoenix follows up with Crutzen, who came off the bench as a defender in this one, if I'm recalling correctly.
Yeah.
Like, he's somebody who's not been in the mix a ton, but I mean, it's one of those situations where you just love to know the chemistry of who's taking which penalty kick.
That's really, I think there's a lot of that going on here. Like, the question mark of like, is it better to have your like quote unquote better penalty takers in training take penalties cold? Like, if they haven't played a larger section of the game, I think it goes on both sides here, because I think it plays a huge part in what happens to Battery as well. But yeah, the fact that Crutzen, it's like a good height for Muse. He reads it the whole way. And obviously at this point, at this point you're thinking that's wraps pretty much, like missing the first two, and all it takes is Charleston making the second, and that'll pretty much do it.
Yeah, and to answer the question that was in chat, and this was calculated by Pony, if you assume a 75% make percentage on the penalties, a team that goes down 0-2 and then wins in 5 rounds is basically odds of 1 in 150.
Unreal.
So
Also,
he could do 149 more of these, and Charleston would win them all.
Yeah. Unreal. I just want to talk about just the editing of this video from USL Championship. Of just, it immediately cuts to Augie in mid sprint. Like, I love his penalty run up is literally just run up. He took it so seriously, just full on, just sprint right into the corner. Love it.
Augie's cold as ice, just fantastic.
And honestly, that's what I would personally do from a penalty shootout. You want your best players to go first to get that boost and just establish an early lead. You never really want to be playing from behind in these instances.
The next penalty from Phoenix, I think, is the funniest one of all of them. I understand that he makes it, but we're getting up. Basically, if you miss, this is game over. You get the little run up, little shimmy, it goes in, and immediately silences the crowd. You're down 2 goals in a penalty shootout, and you silence the crowd. I wish I had the audacity.
Bold on the like placement, everything, like goes for power. It is an unbelievable pen, like maybe the best one taken on the night. And yeah, Renzo Zambrano knew something that we didn't, I guess.
Huge game from him off the bench in regulation too, and then to come in and do that, what a night from him.
And this is where we start to get into kind of the beginning of the end, sort of. And one thing that I want you to kind of notice about Rios Novo is he's a smaller guy. And so because of that, he's super quick on his line. Because he doesn't have the long strides and stuff, he is just so fast across his line. He is so much fun to watch in a penalty. Like, I understand that he pushes it wide, but Rios had it saved. If that was on target, it was saved anyway.
And hate to see it for Archer, certainly.
No kidding. This one, okay, this run-up's hilarious to me too. Just, what is this?
Little crouch, a little bit of a chop step. There you go.
For people who are podcast only, this is the worst podcasting of all time, by the way. We're sorry.
You go back and watch the penalties, and we're trying to mix in the context, but
Just another good save.
yeah, this is the Chris
And
Allen
immediately
one,
turns
or
around the
Charles.
entire shootout then.
There is
Yeah.
something about the run up for both Archer and Allen's. I'd say it probably goes for Dodson's too, where you hate to be cliche about it, but there's just something about the run up that like does not scream confidence. In like they are going for simplicity. They're trying to be like keep it short, keep it simple, keep it on target. And doing all of those things, like, I mean, Allen's in particular, it's like very central, very good height for Rios Novo. Like, there's really nothing about this penalty. Unfortunately for Chris Allen, there's like really nothing about this penalty that ever says like it's going in, short of Rios Novo being fooled and going the wrong way.
And not
And what
just,
an impossible moment there too. I mean, you are actively in the process of blowing the lead that you built up. Huge moment in front of the fans. Just tough.
I also just want to say that, like, and I hate to say this, Alan, but like he told everybody where he was going. I mean, if you watch his foot, he places his toe is pointing right to where he's shooting. And because he is taking such a slow run up, like you said, not a lot of confidence, he goes to place it more, which means his foot doesn't swing through it as immediately as it normally would, which means Rios Novo had just that extra split second to read it. And there was just no question on where it was going. Like, it was just enough time for Rios Novo just to have no question, which is why he probably didn't celebrate as hard, just because he knew what was coming. Another slow run up. I love it.
Yeah, very choppy.
I
That was
really,
nearly a save from Hughes there as well.
I was
Yeah.
gonna say, I really thought Muse got to that one initially. Guess is right. Again, not a particularly. I would say compared to Zambrano and Gallardo, not a particularly great pen from Arteaga, but he's put it enough in the corner like that, and that's the key difference. Like he's gotten it enough in the side netting to where Muse, despite the fact that he gets a little bit of a hand on it or maybe a fingertip, just not enough. And I think, unfortunately for Trey Muse, he's probably thinking about that one to this day, because it's just like, could that have been their moment to turn it back around? But Arteaga, and I don't know. I think this is where, and we're about to talk about Derek Dodson's, final pen, which is so unfortunate in that it's him. But I think like there is something about the takers here where it's like the first two takers for Battery kind of makes sense. Although Patterson was like sort of like billed as a specialist, Augie Williams, you fully expect to take one. The next three, like, are those the first like people that you necessarily think of? A lot of the subs sort of dictated like who's taking penalties. So is it just that where like Pierman sort of painted himself into a corner? But I don't know. Like sometimes you want to go with sometimes you go with the guy who makes the most in training. Sometimes it's like, I'm just thinking like Ikaza, Marcanic, like are these guys like goal scorers more so who are?
You're right. You had three defenders, a defensive midfielder, and Augie Williams take these penalties. And again, I don't know what's going on the training ground. These guys have the sense, they have the confidence in the moment, but
For
just
sure.
reads a bit odd in hindsight.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a matter of just who volunteers to take one. We've seen it at international finals all the time that sometimes someone just doesn't feel right in the moment. They just don't feel the confidence, and it's whoever wants to step up to take it.
And with the last one, a little Rocco love from Nicholas Murray and a little Rocco love here at the very, very end. Dotson steps up and Rios Novo is just cracks me up. He's so much and just cold. Just no celebration, really. Just incredible.
His lack of reaction was enough to, I think, actually put Mike and Devin off for a second, because Mike was like, Mike second guessed himself almost. It felt like in the like, he's like, no, Phoenix win. Like they like Phoenix are the champions, but like Rios Novo just standing there with his with his finger mustache was confusing, I think, at first. Yeah, another one where it's like, I think, you mentioned the impossible moment, John, and I think that like that for Dodson, they've pulled it back. It's now like make or break. And unfortunately for Dodson, he just couldn't convert and extended another round. So just heartbreaking, obviously, for Charleston. And man, the silence at Patriots Point when this pinged off the post was wild. Like, I don't know that I've heard a more deafening silence than that.
Man, I mean, it was a fun. It was just a fun and good and awful penalty shootout. And to see the Phoenix fans, which, by the way, did not give enough love to the amount of Phoenix fans that showed up to this, like took over a whole part of the stadium, and just a lot of fun. The picture of Rocco afterwards doing the Emilio pose with the MVP trophy, hilarious, and it just fun. That's what I keep coming back to with not just this, but every single final we've had, both League One, League Two, which, by the way, if you didn't watch the League Two final, that one I would argue was the best final of all of these. And the W League final was also just so much fun. We didn't have a bad final this year. There was no blowout. There was no real blowout final. There was no like, this is boring, we're turning this off. It was just fun this year. 2023 in general was fun. I'm sure several fan bases would say that's not true. But even then, if you look around the league and are saying, I am following the league itself, the league storylines this year were incredible.
Yeah. Oh, well, and I did laugh. The one last note on the broadcast is that the quote from Mike, who said there were some very loud voices who doubted whether Juan Guerra was the right guy for this Phoenix team. And I'm just like, man, the shade, like it was like a whole cloud descended over the USL show, because it wasn't that long ago that we had this talk of like, man, is Juan the guy? And obviously, I think overall there are still questions at Phoenix, and I know this is going to sound stupid, whatever, they just won a title, and there's still a distance for them to go in terms of catching that sort of top tier of the West in the regular season. I think they're certainly capable of it. Maybe this gives them a good foundation to build off of. Certainly interesting to see where both of these teams go from here, because, lost amongst all this too is the fact that Battery nearly went from one of the worst teams like in USL history to the champions in 1 year. So I think sky's the limit for both these teams. Now we enter the season of eternal optimism, which is the off season.
So if we're doing the worst of first thing, can we officially crown Hartford as next year's runners up?
Absolutely not.
Sorry,
yeah,
Hartford.
I mean, Charleston should hold themselves proud for the season that they have, and like they have a tremendous foundation to move forward and let this result kind of prove to be a way to just kind of motivate themselves for next year. And like to touch base on Phoenix, it almost strikes me as the same thing that the 2003 Florida Marlins went through, that they were kind of like in the midst of a rebuild. They weren't all the way there yet, and then somehow just walked their way into a World Series championship. And it's the same thing I think Phoenix is kind of going through at this moment that, like, at the start of the year, I don't think any of us had said Phoenix was ever anywhere close to being a finished product to winning the league title. And how they go about it next season is going to be very interesting if they kind of come back and have a very strong year, or if it's another kind of mid-tier season that like gets them into the playoffs and then just relies on getting hot at the end.
I think what gives me confidence in the direction of this Phoenix team is that they stayed aggressive all year long in continuing to build out that roster, whether it was buying Panos Armonakis off of Loudon midseason, trading for Derek Formella, who was so crucial in the playoff stretch. Guerra wasn't afraid to kind of make some bold decisions with like Fede Varela, Daniel Crutzen, who came in with pretty high expectations. From discussions I had with people at the team, they expected them to be real cornerstones of this rising side. They didn't hit to the degree that was expected. They ended up getting dropped. Rising built a team also that wasn't really made out of USL stars. Compare and contrast like Tampa Bay, for instance, who went out and got a whole bunch of names you know. Rising got Danny Trejo, sure, but other than that, it was a lot of players that they brought in and scouted from outside of the league, players with a little bit less renown. I think there's something a little bit sustainable in the way that they've come about this roster, and it makes me feel even better that, listen, this is the first year of them kind of entering this new era, right, of the post-Rick Schantz Phoenix Rising. If it ends up in a championship, even if it's one that took a little bit of luck, you're always going to hang your hat on that.
You kind of talk about players for Phoenix that they kind of scouted. I understand that he went through Loudon first about these like not renowned players. Panos Armonakis might be one of the craziest like USL people of world renowned to USL we've seen in a while. I understand that it's no Didier Drogba. I totally get that. It's not on the same level as like a Joe Cole. I totally get that. But Armonakis was the guy. He was one of the top talents in world football that people thought was going to end up at a top like 3 team in a top 5 league competing for big things, and it didn't really work out. But like Armonakis was a big time guy, and you still see it. Like you see the confidence. You see.
Did you see what he tweeted after the game?
Mentality Monsters at San Antonio FC is hilarious.
He was off the pitch maybe 15 minutes, and he tweets mentality monsters at San Antonio FC. Like that guy is just the best.
Man, he just
ice in his veins.
Just yeah, wow. He's nothing if not confident.
No kidding. Also, I keep coming back to this, but Formella, Oakland, baby, what was you doing?
I've given this tidbit before that he ended the season as their leading scorer, which it says a lot about the fact that it was all downhill after that. And I understand they needed depth at the wingback spot. Theoretically, Babo Njai was going to give them that. He was hurt. He didn't really hit the ground running. He's somebody who I can't defend anyway. Like, questions to be asked for Oakland, but hey, Phoenix, like that was a great pickup for them. So credit where credit's due.
Also, speaking of Loudon, we got the Mustachio question, and then we all were kind of thinking like Michael Bryant ? And then I understand that they brought it back a guy from last year. Did not realize he had a mustache. Not a guy that I had no clue.
Zach Ryan's good, but like he's not the mustache. Michael Bryant is the mustache.
Yeah, like
he's not necessarily known.
It's like if we said that Trey Muse was the mustache, we'd be like, he has one. But
Off-season ranking of best facial hair in the league this podcast.
Now, are we talking about best?
Let's not.
Or are we talking about like they have a lot of it?
Let's not give a hair ranking of any sort with Nicholas Murray in the chat and Taylor on the podcast. We're opening ourselves up to all kinds of.
No, I am. Y'all are doing nothing but laughing.
Well, Taylor, close to home for you. Enzo Martinez might be my pick here.
Oh, see, I
Yeah.
always go back to the picture of Matt Van Okel when he shaved his beard off but kept the mustache and looked like Mr. Eggman from Sonic. That one's a classic moment to me. Just random stuff that he does with his hair. Yeah. I want to see someone do who was the guy for the Athletics that had like the swirl?
Raleigh
I want
Fingers.
someone to do it.
Like that.
So, yeah, well. And screw you, Nicholas. I shave. Dang it. My job doesn't let me have a beard. Yeah, listen.
You work for the Yankees?
Can't talk about it. It's in negotiations. There's who's that? That's Michael Bryant. According to Devin Almensa, craziest cornhole player ever, apparently is just arguably better at cornhole than soccer, and he's pretty good at the soccer thing. So crazy. There's been some news coming out of the USL these last couple of days, and we could talk about player signings and all that kind of stuff, but we don't really have the time for that. Although Rhode Island, if this is the kind of signings they're going to be making all year long, they are going to be contenders next year. I'm in love with the signings they're making in Rhode Island.
It's what you want out of your expansion teams to be competitive year one.
Which, hey, just saying, we interviewed Connor Smith. Just saying.
And just, speaking to it, two former San Diego players and Koke Vegas and Grant Stoneman, Connor McGlynn, who's a Northeastern guy and really flexible at the back. I can't remember the name of the local number 10 midfielder who has looked bright in some of his youth appearances. But this has the makings of a team that's going to possess the ball and kind of bring that loyal brand of soccer out to the East. Excited to see how they look when that roster is fully formed.
Which does make a lot of sense with Kano and Nate Miller doing their coaching badges together.
That was my thought today too. Yeah.
It's going to be hilarious when Rhode Island is immediately more competitive than Hartford.
Steals their fan favorite player and then is more competitive immediately.
Let me give one other signing shout out, by the way. Get some League One love in here because Trevor Amond taking that step up to Sacramento. And kudos once again, Nicholas, he mentioned the Rondo newsletter for linking to my little tweet thread about Amon. But he's somebody with the game that you want if you're Sacramento, because optimally, right, you're going to put Russell Cicerone on the wing, playing off of that proper number 9 goal scoring striker. Amon is that dude. 20 plus goals for Northern Colorado, always in the right position. A lot of finesse, a lot of selection in his shot. I think he's really going to hit for the Republic.
And
in
that's
terms
just
of,
a statement that's just like a statement of intent of we're not going to let basically in front of my ELO ratings, they had the 9th best regular season of all time, and to not turn that into even a finals appearance is basically a true statement of we're not going to accept what happened last season. We need to go out and improve now.
Announce it the day after the final too. Good stuff.
I was going to say, it wasn't even 24 hours after the final whistle that they were announcing the top goal scorer and USL League One player of the year, adding to a team that finished top of the West. In terms of destinations for Amon, it is a best case scenario because they are essentially the finished product in many ways and are just looking for you. That's not as a player, what more could you ask for in that it's I'm joining this team that is in so many ways finished and just needs me to come, score the goals. John, all the things you said about Amon, plus the fact that, I think one-on-one, you'd pretty much back him in any situation in behind. He is going to score. There's something about that situation that he thrives on. And with the foundation and the spine they've gotten that team, it is a best case scenario landing spot for him. I do think it comes naturally with a lot of pressure in the sense that when you are the guy expected to score the goals for Sac Republic and you're making the jump from League One into the championship, it's hey, can he get it done at this level? We've seen forwards from League One struggle to make that jump at times, maybe not doing it at quite the level. I'm thinking Hurst, Omaha, into the championship hasn't hit with like the same impact that we thought he might. So I think if anyone's going to do it, Aman is definitely that guy. The numbers are off the charts. But it'll be interesting to see him kind of foist immediate pressure of, hey, you've got to be that guy for one of the best teams in the league.
And I don't want to take away from Aman by any stretch, right? But when we saw the goals dry up for Northern Colorado's, which means the goals dried up for Aman, if we're being honest, it was whenever, you didn't have Rogers just bombing balls into the box into him with being a pinpoint accurate passer. And this is not a knock on Rogers either. If he's still in League One next year, somebody has to have some weird blackmail on because he needs to be higher up. Sacramento is going to be providing him service all day long. And that's not it's not me saying that he can't create stuff on his own, but when he was best last year, like all strikers, they get good service, and Sacramento can do that. And especially if you have someone like a Russell Cicerone who can get the ball in and play him in, or you also have someone like a Gurr who can just pass balls in, it's going to be ridiculous, the kind of goals that he can put up. It's going to be a really, really fun one to watch there.
Yeah, Nicholas stole my thunder there with Gurr Viadair as well, like wingbacks who can really deliver a good ball and interplay well. Keko, even, I've got the El Paso stuff up behind me, but Nick Ross, I think
we're forgetting that Roro Lopez exists too.
Yeah.
Like, he was unreal stacked in that area of the park.
No, it's not. It's genuinely not fair. And Sac Republic, if they finish anywhere below first next season, it'll be a disappointment.
I want to go out east, and I guess southeast in the northern part of South Florida, whatever. Tampa Bay.
I think you're looking for central.
Is Tampa Central
South
Florida?
North,
Is Tampa
Tampa Bay is home to South Florida.
South Florida is in Tampa Bay, but I don't think it's actually South Florida because that's why I'm always confused.
To be fair, when it was founded, it was the southernmost public institution in the state of Florida at the time. And then a few years later, they founded, I think, FAU after that. And so, at the time, it was truly South Florida, and now it just doesn't make any sense.
We are firmly Central Florida, but yeah, the University of South Florida. Whatever. It helps. Someone give me a compass. Look, I'm doing my best here. I want to go south, but not quite as far as Miami. Dang it. Okay.
So we're talking about Robbie Nielsen.
Who came from Scotland, which is east. Got it.
There we go.
Listen, Robbie Nielsen comes from Scotland, has a lot of experience, has coached at the highest level. John and I kind of posted the same tweet at the same time when it happened, which was basically, this is Neil Collins. He is Neil Collins. I know some people were like, look at his defensive record, but I would also say that he was in the same league as Hearts and Rangers. That's not fair. If you take away every Hearts and Rangers match, it ends up being I don't think it's a storyline at all. I think you would still say that's the weakest part of his system, but I don't think it's at all an issue. I think you're saying that's a good coach. It's just when you're in Scotland, you're working to be the third best team in Scotland. That is your goal, is to be the third best team in Scotland. And unfortunately, a couple years he was fourth and fifth. That is kind of what it is. I really like this hire. I really like this hire. They're like the pressing rate that they have. It was something that I looked into was whenever they're losing, whenever his teams are losing, if they go into a losing position, their presses per defensive action, basically that whole thing of how effectively you're pressing. Their average was 3. The most effective pressers in the world like Barcelona when they were at their peak, like Real Madrid, Liverpool when they were at their pump. We're at 6. They are such a hyper aggressive pressing team, and whenever they are losing, and when you can kind of out talent like Tampa Bay can with 75% of the league, that is a crazy combination.
Yeah, I'm talked a bit with I don't know if anyone knows Mark Ellis on Twitter, big San Antonio fan, but he's a natural born Scotsman, fan of Dundee United. And he tended to paint the picture of more of a conservative sort of manager. Like, his main complaint was that his approach is too negative a lot of the time, using kind of a proper back five. But in terms of the profile, I've been digging in a bit for something I'm writing up about it. He's what you want with the way that they pass, the way that he tries to counter. It's very similar to the late season Collins Law handover era Rowdies. Like, this roster, which, by the way, they announced the lion's share of it is already signed back up for next season, fits the bill for tactical continuity, but with a fresh voice, with, as you mentioned, experience at the highest levels of the game in Scotland. So really bullish on what the Rowdies are doing there.
And I mean, the Rowdies fan base won't have to change anything about their love of Iron Brew and all of that. So, I mean, in terms of continuity, this really ticks all of the boxes.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have to change anything. Let's go to South Florida this time. And we got a fab bomb over this one, which is kind of wild. And Antonio Nocerino, because C's and Italian scare me. Because I never know if it's a CH sound or a C or like a S sound. Anyway, Antonio Nocerino signed for Miami as their next coach, which is kind of a Silva statement signing that he always seems to come out with, which is like, hey, we're going to find the biggest, flashiest guy and probably give him a lot of money to do so. I mean, I think Miami still has the highest lower league transfer fee of all time of like 800 something K for Richie Ryan when they were still in like the 3rd tier, which is ridiculous. And this just fits the bill for Miami. And I don't know what this means for the Miami FC, but at least it's showing an investment into the club when a lot of people were saying this is for sure the year that they die.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of pedigree, it is like you said, a guy breaking into management has it like carries a certain name, has a certain like weight in terms of like, you know, he did play in MLS for a period of time with Orlando towards the tail end of his career. I think like, all things considered, it's one that I'm totally reserving judgment on, in that we've literally never seen him in a managerial role. So it's not something that we can draw a lot of conclusions about. Does it have sort of the, you know, the weight of like previous Miami FC appointments? Like, probably not, in terms of like, oh, this is going to be a total game changer and this is going to bring like a different caliber of player. I don't know that that's like necessarily true. But yeah, it's, you know, a player who has played at the highest level again. Will he have a splash like in Miami? I think we've kind of heard that story before. So I'm waiting to see.
This is a team that like launched in the NASL days with Maldini and Nesta involved. And no offense to Nocerino, whatever we're calling him, Gaylor. I just, man, he doesn't have that name value to me. He's somebody who, at the same time, doesn't really have higher level coaching experience. And that's not to denigrate the fact that he's done good work, certainly at Orlando's youth program. And from what I understand, some youth programs related to Italian clubs or the Italian national setup. But it's a bold hire if you're Miami, certainly, to say this is the guy who's going to lead us forward, especially when, just based on their first roster announcement, it looks like they're losing about 2/3 of their minutes played right off the bat. Really impactful players. So new era in Miami once again. I'm happy to see that this is probably a sign that Silva is still going to be as financially wild as he likes to be, building that squad out. So open mind. It's kind of similar to the Jermaine Jones thing, right? Where somebody who's not really done it at a high level managerially as like the head coach, but sometimes you need the change of energy. So here for it.
Yeah, and to at least just establish someone's career, doing it in USL, I think, is a tremendous kind of proving ground type level to try and get a start for your career. I think it's going to be a very challenging beginning, especially trying to rebuild this entire Miami FC team that, in all honesty, from previous seasons, we've always looked at it as this team should be good on paper. Why is it not performing to that level? And he has his work cut out for him. But if you're going to look for ambitious hires or just a big splash in the transfer window, it's a very sound decision to try and appoint this person.
Speaking of that roster, and honestly, the golden goose of that roster was Bolu Akinyote, which El Paso, at least in my mind, which El Paso's already snapped up. But I'm excited to see what Kyle Murphy goes and does, because there was a minute where he was the next one in the USL, and I'm excited to see where he ends up landing, because somebody is going to get I think you're kind of looking at fading the fade a little bit. I think wherever he lands, he's probably going to have a nice little rebound.
Yeah, he's somebody with a ton of talent. I mean, showed up well at pretty much every stop. Miami wasn't a perfect fit. This was a team that could never figure it out offensively, and it wasn't necessarily his fault. But yeah, big things on the horizon for him.
Can we talk about volume goal scorers who left Memphis and then didn't score as much? Anyways, never mind.
No, because Goodrum was Goodrum killed it in Tulsa.
He was quality in Tulsa. He was quality in Tulsa. But no, Kyle Murphy, I know, like, it feels like there's something more. There's another level there that maybe someone else can unlock.
Another name that I think needs to be thrown out there for USL World, Zach Prince is available.
I was gonna say they both might be available apparently.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I mean, I just noticed Zach Prince because he just got the job, because he was just here, and then so
kind of a mess. Like, I mean, not to like crap on guys for losing their jobs, because like you never want to see that, and like it's kind of a mess for Lesane and Prince, because obviously Lesane getting the Red Bull job was a big deal. Prince leaves mid-season at New Mexico United to go join him there, and then the project falls apart, like less than 6 months later. It's just sad to see, quite honestly, because it's, now these guys are kind of at sea, but I'm sure I'm sure like any smart team out there could snap somebody up. But
and he showed his quality with New York Red Bulls in the second half of the season. It was admittedly a very tough situation, and they've just got into the playoffs at the 8th seed, beating Charlotte FC in the play-in round before they exited to FC Cincinnati. But there's enough quality that he has shown, I think, this previous MLS season, that someone will take a chance. And even if it is coming back into USL, well, I think he has more than earned a starting job as a manager somewhere.
I agree with Nicholas that Troy and Zach are going to be a matched pair. I think that Troy is probably going to get an MLS gig. The reason I brought up Zach Prince is because he was the assistant, and I figured that he'd be more likely to get a rebound head coaching job in USL, while Troy get maybe a head coach in MLS, or maybe an assistant to rebuild his name a little bit. But I think that that's going to be an interesting conversation, because I think if either one of them were to drop to USL, I think it'd be Zach Prince. I think Troy has an MLS job waiting for him.
I'm gonna say something controversial yet brave, that I think this is sort of maybe proving, depending on what Zach Prince's like next move is, if they can establish themselves at an MLS team as that pair. If Zach Prince gets an MLS head coaching job before some of the big name USL head coaches, it will be like the proof that the only true route into MLS head coaching is by being an assistant in MLS. And being a head coach in USL is not actually a viable route to becoming an MLS manager. So that's my controversial take. Because if not, I'm not saying that Zach Prince doesn't deserve a shot down the road or anything like that. I'm just saying that there's guys who have done better jobs in USL, like as head coaches, who, if he gets a shot ahead of them, it's just kind of
when he took over for Prince, like turning that team around. And I mean, no offense, obviously, like Prince is a smart guy who understands the game.
For sure,
nothing but good things about him. But yeah, everything you said there is absolutely right.
This is where, we kind of talk about, and maybe Ryan posted in our private chat, or he said out loud, in private chat, 7 jobs available in MLS. But we're getting at this weird point in USL where some teams like to get rid of their coach in the off season and not during the season. But it also kind of feels like, unless there is a ready-made job for somebody to jump into, like a promotion situation like we're seeing in Detroit City, not saying that someone within Detroit City is getting the head coaching job. I'm saying, like, Trevor James getting the move up. We're not going to see a whole lot of head coaching movement this year because it feels like almost everybody else is pretty solid in their spots, again, unless there's a promotion situation. I wonder if the USL carousel this year in this offseason is just not going to be as big as it was before. I wonder if the big carousel happens in your League Ones this year as opposed to the championship.
Yeah, I think League One certainly has some more storylines. I mean, Hartford and Detroit, obviously, we'll see what gives with those. I have a bit of an idea what's going on up in the Northeast. Detroit is just blank slate from what I understand. Like, I have no idea what they're doing. And I mean, big shoes to fill, right? Like, Trevor James figured out a system that let a team with somewhat limited resources and no offense make the playoffs 2 years running. That's a hard sort of magic to recapture.
I want Pearman there so bad.
Ben Pearman back. Detroit. No, I think maybe championship setting itself up, like, because with all those vacancies, or with not many vacancies and not much movement, it could be setting itself up for a lot of movement mid-season versus there wasn't much this year. Because if teams feel like they are getting off track with the project or something like that, it could lead to maybe some more reactionary sort of moves if teams aren't performing well. Where I think there's a lot of clubs who are kind of in that wait and see sort of thing with, they're sort of like in the early stages with their current manager. I mean, and I might be projecting from a Locomotive perspective, but I think there's like there's a lot of managers in that like second year, maybe third year with their current club of like, is this the thing or are we going to go a different direction? So be interesting to see how it leads to, if it leads to any more movement, mid-season.
And we've seen teams like Hartford who aren't afraid to stop a project well in its infancy before, or even moving forward when they separated ways with Tab Ramos earlier this year. So it's very likely that we could see teams making early decisions next season to bring in a new manager.
Watford Athletic.
R.I.P. Harry Watling.
I mean, yeah. Oh, I mean, can we get a Neil Warnock over to Hartford, please?
Neil Warnock to Hartford Athletic.
It looks like a goblin.
Just all of them. Just any also ran, like Alan Pardew, Alan Kirbishley, just like any of the guys who are linked with like every single job in England. We just get those guys through Hartford.
To be fair, Watford has had their same manager since May 2023. They haven't changed in a few months.
Done a good job.
So,
congratulations to
It's been
Watford.
6 months.
Congratulations, Watford. I said it earlier. I understand that this is probably not what's going to happen. He's probably going to go somewhere else, probably like an MLS job or something like that. But I want to pipe dream Harks to Detroit, because if we can get like the first 2-3 years of Greenville system up into Detroit, I would be madly in love. I would love it.
Just that turn of phrase, like for like John Harkes in Detroit. I will be madly in love. That was just like that was really wild.
I mean, look, if they keep a similar roster with that kind of defensive setup they already had with Harks kind of taking over, I think it'd be a perfect succession from Trevor James. They have a similar mindset. And we also saw with the Harks that he can get a lot out of an offensive system if he needs it. I think he'd be the perfect successor to Trevor James, and maybe rebuild, like I can head coach at a higher level, and well, he's going to get an MLS job if he wants it, because John Harks, if we're being honest. So he's probably getting an MLS job somewhere, but that's where I want him to go. I want him to go to Detroit so badly.
He feels too splashy for them, honestly.
Would Nate Miller be too splashy as well?
Nate's interesting because like he was the Lansing Ignite guy. He's got a little bit of the Michigan in him. I don't know. Harks, with the whole John Harks brand of it all, is kind of in a different stratosphere in a way versus Miller, even though, I mean, you can argue whichever way you want on who's the better tactical manager, certainly. But I don't know. Miller feels like a more natural fit of the two, if you ask me.
Oh, man. See, that's where I'm more excited to see where these end up. Now, I did say, I think in our USL show, I mean, yes, Harks did coach in the championship with FC Cincinnati, but also like that was just a weird situation of how he was fired, left, whatever. That was just a bizarre thing that happened there. But I think I said in the USL show Discord, like, Rhode Island is going to be such a hot spot for former Loyal guys to go, mostly because Miller and Connor Smith did their coaching badges together, and there's so much that's going to be linked between the two. And not saying that just because they did their coaching badges, they're like best friends or whatever, but you're more likely to say, hey, I know a guy that has a club that's up and running and I trust him. And I think and I know what kind of system he runs. Same thing for Kano. If Kano calls Nate Miller and says, do you think this guy will fit a system that I'm running, which he'll know because they did all their coaching badges together, he'll know. And I think that's going to be a hot spot for Loyal players. So if you're looking at where the Loyal player is going to go, I think that could be a good place, not just this year, but also years to come.
And to be fair, I've heard about a couple of Loyal players, maybe 4 or 5, who have signed elsewhere and not going to Rhode Island. So it's going to be like just spreading that brand of positive attacking soccer all over the place in this league, which is nothing but a good thing. But you make a good point that and I think that's also partially down to Kano being so well respected within league circles at the same time. Like, you talk to the guy for 10 minutes and you're sold on whatever project he's selling you.
I mean, I would talk to Kano before and after every single Legion game, and I would follow him to do whatever I would follow him into war. I love the guy. He's awesome. I'm excited for Rhode Island fans to really get their paws on him because Kano is incredible. But do we have any final USL thoughts for the 2023 season?
Yeah, I mean, it was a big year in a lot of ways, from just the talk about promotion and relegation, the San Diego thing, not everything positive, but it was another year for the league to really grow. If you're thinking about, like, Josh Winder was playing in the league at the start of the year. Credios and Dina made the move over to Europe. Players like Barajas broke out, Corcoran, Worth, Duran Furry, like so much of the youth stuff that the league has talked a lot about really seems to be flourishing in many, many markets in a way that's meaningful. The television thing going forward is going to be gigantic. Like, you can't talk enough about the USL being on over-the-air CBS. That's unreal for a league that was on YouTube 8 years ago. It was a great year to watch the game on the pitch, certainly. That's obviously the main focus and why we're doing this thing. Yeah, nothing but appreciation for what the league is putting out in terms of product, to y'all for getting here and talking about this sport for too long every single week. Yeah, just an amazing time, an amazing year.
Yeah, I mean, echo all of that, and I think what Nicholas is putting in the chat in terms of the quality of play is just like it just continues to rise. I think the fact that we're talking about some of the managers that we're talking about, some of the tactics we're talking about, this was a league in which essentially like every single team played like some version of hoof it to the biggest guy up front, right? And like hope, and not to disparage the likes of Adam John and some of the legends of USL, but that was an element of like how it was played. And the league has evolved so much tactically, where you've got the likes of Guerra and Pierman and Lowry and like these guys, these aren't even like revolutionary ideas anymore in the league. Lowry trying to play possession soccer in 2019 was like the craziest thing, and now half the league is using sweeper keepers, and like people are pressing like crazy and playing counterattacking, playing possession, like playing different systems, all this sort of stuff. And couple that with the fact that the level of play and the quality of players that the league attracts is just off, just like night and day in terms of what we've seen over the last few years. There's all kinds of players coming up and just more and more talents being unearthed every day. So yeah, I mean, for all the reasons on and off the field, it has just been a great season of growth. I think ultimately there is that lingering pain and shadow of Loyal's demise. And I don't think we can underestimate that sort of thing. And being able to target like sustainability and an ecosystem that prevents that from happening in the future has got to remain the goal. But yeah, by and large, just another season of growth, and on and off the pitch for USL, it's been a great one. It feels like there are a lot of things moving in the direction of what they've been targeting all these years, in terms of finding the league's like final sort of position in US soccer and what this actually, what it actually means. And it feels like there's been a lot of meaningful steps taken there. But the biggest thing was, the product on the field is just, has just taken so many steps. And I'm excited for 2024.
Yeah, not to get lost. I know John had mentioned it with the youth product, but I mean, Davian Kimbrough making his debut at 13 years old earlier this season is not just a landmark for the league, but it's a landmark for just North American sports in general. And it just kind of proves that there's teams who are investing in their youth academies to help build out these programs in all of these different cities. And I think what also really helped with this year is it seemed like outside of your Hartfords and Las Vegas teams, you had a pretty decent league top to bottom that everyone seemed fairly competitive. I mean, Monterey Bay was only 5 points out of a playoff spot in the Western Conference, and they were finishing second bottom of the league. I think what really helped was the league now has entirely independent teams. There are no MLS2 sides in the league for the first time since, for a long time. And it seemed like it really helped raise the bar for the league. Dare I say it raised our game, and it's just more positive behaviors for the league moving forward, even in spite of losing a team so positive in their community like Loyal. I still feel like the league had a lot of growth this year that it's going to be even more exciting next season.
We talk about the positives on and off. We talked about it a lot. It was a storyline off the season or in the off season, and then coming into the season, and Walking 90, did their thing at the beginning of the year. Irvin Parra, man, we talked about like favorite moments throughout the year. Him scoring against Red Wolves, I was emotional. Like, dude had cancer earlier this year, fought it, came back, and played 10 matches, got a goal.
Mhm.
And as a 30-year-old who, was battling cancer, I mean, it is one of those things that might cut her career short. And second to last game of the season for you to, or second to last appearance that you have of the season to get your goal after fighting cancer. I mean, that was, look, it made me an emotional person. I was just so excited. And I don't think there's been anybody more universally rooted for. Everybody was rooting for him. Everybody had a cancer awareness match when they played Northern Colorado. Everyone. And like Walk at 90 raised money for, all the cancer foundation stuff. And just in general, I think the biggest takeaway from 2023 is the USL community was incredible this year. There were a lot of fundraisers that kind of happened. We did our own whenever we were, raising money for the Pain Foundation. We raised a good bit of money for that. And just in general, like, this community has just been awesome and growing like crazy all the time. To me, the cool part about this season was what happened off of it. And it just happened to be what happened on the field was just a small part of the story. So that this year was just cool. So, and with that, any other final 2023 thoughts before we turn the page and say it is time for 2024? No. All right. Final things for the night, Ryan.
Yeah, I actually, it's a weird time that I've actually ordered a brand new, at least something for my kitchen. It's a dish that lets me help make soup, but I have a lid for it so it doesn't splatter everywhere. And it's supposed to arrive today. I was told Amazon was going to ship it by 10 p.m. And I'm just super excited for it. I don't know why I've been looking forward to it, but I was just like, this is going to give me so many more meals to make. I'm like, I was like looking forward to it all day at work. And I was like, yes, I'm going to like open up my kitchen a lot more. So that's what I've been looking forward to.
Ryan, that's a pot.
No, it's an actual like miniature bowl that I can get that has a lid for it. I can put it in a microwave and it's easier to make soup.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah.
Phil.
I will briefly answer the one question in chat there from Locomotive. I tweeted about this from Seriously Loco not that long ago. It is, despite the fact that Locomotive has not mentioned a soccer-specific stadium entering year 6 of their existence, it is far crazier that they have not announced a W League team or any sort of women's side to their academy or anything like that. It's absolutely crazy. And like, I will use my platform to talk about the fact that like Locomotive needs to get it together on the women's side, because they've done a ton of positive stuff with the academy on the men's side and with building sort of their club infrastructure on that side. No excuse really now, 6 years in, that we're not talking about some involvement either in the W League or Super League. On the non-soccer side, I'm wearing my Alpine hat for F1 because the stupidest sporting event of the entire year in the entire world is happening this weekend, and that is the Las Vegas Grand Prix. It is happening on the Strip in Las Vegas. It's absolutely shut down the city for multiple weeks while they build the thing. It is happening in the dead of night on the East Coast. Qualifying on Saturday takes place at 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The race lights out at 1 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday morning. So yeah, absolutely the dumbest sporting event. It is a pure cash grab by F1 and the casinos. They're talking about race temperatures being in the like 40 degrees range, which is like not how the cars are supposed to work. So it could be just an absolute mess. And I for one am looking forward to watching the dumbest sporting event of the year at the dumbest time. I will not be watching live, just to be super clear. I'm not staying up till 3 a.m. to watch qualifying. But yeah, so that is what has got my attention, this dumb sport with their dumb ideas, and it's going to be hilarious.
I'm saying up until 1. You should check out the Caesars Palace Grand Prix they had during the 80s. That was an even dumber Formula One Grand Prix as well. It like took place literally in the parking lot of Caesars Palace.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. If the lights don't come out and say we're also having a 3 a.m. friendly in the middle of this, I'm not a fan of them anymore.
A lights versus Austin Bold Formula One derby.
I mean, I would watch. Again, not live, but I would watch it eventually. John?
Yeah, my mind's just kind of empty. I'm excited to like get back to the routine that I prefer of like going to bed at a normal time and not just like constantly hammering the soccer and doing that work. So that's my plan for the next handful of months, I guess.
Nice. You realize that once transfers are happening, that's not happening more, right?
Yeah, I already know that. Yeah, I just got
Just make sure we're on the same page. Rest up while you can, pal. For me, we are renovating our band room at the school, which is great. But I thought renovations were starting Monday, which they're actually starting this Thursday, which meant our clean out day, which was scheduled for Thursday, is now happening tomorrow, which is exactly how I want to spend my birthday, which was cleaning out a band room until 9 p.m. That's what I had on the docket, which is cool. We got much needed renovations, and I get to be around my wonderful children until late. If you're watching this and you're saying, I'm offended, you should be studying for Spanish, kids. Study your Spanish or something. I don't know. Whatever. It's been a long night. Look, we have a lot of fun stuff on the horizon. Kit season is about to get a big revitalization. So some big changes happening. That super stoked about that. Some fun off-season series stuff on the way. Can't really do a full spoiler on that, but super stoked. And in the description here, we're going to have a Google form that we want you to fill out. And basically, we want you to tell us what went well, what didn't go well for this season with us. We are always looking to improve. We are always looking to get better for 2024 and so on and so forth. We've seen a lot of growth from this year, from the beginning of the 2.0, as we called it. We have seen, at least on the Dying Bird app, we have seen us gain over 2,500 followers in just over a year and a half, which is super cool. And we want to continue to grow this as much as we can, which is why we are posting like these Google Forms that we want you to fill out and help us, because we want to give you a product that you want to watch/listen. Also, if you made this far, I just want you to know the Apple link that you're used to seeing. If you're watching this on YouTube and you're not used to Apple, we have a new Apple feed. You have to look for it. We know the old one hasn't updated in months. We promise the new one works. It's annoying. We're sorry. But thank you so much for a wonderful 2023 season. So much on the horizon, so much to plan. And we really appreciate you all so much. Be active on the Dying Bird app. And if we have to move somewhere else, we'll figure it out from there. Thank you all so much. And even though he wasn't here tonight, here's Alan's voice.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.